Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News with Tracey Kennedy. Live, of course, on Revolution Radio, Studio A. Hi, everybody. TurtleIslandNews.info. And, of course, the Awake Radio Group. I have put up a video, the one I was telling you about. It will also be available on the top of my website for the next couple days. I would like you to listen to it. Tell me if you have ever spoke any of these languages or if you heard them. I'm pretty sure this is going to be taken off. We're getting this before how do I say it? These languages, these people are being followed by linguists, educators, people involved in the ufology movements all over the world. We got it before they did. We're number one. So, well, I know a guy. So I'd like you to hear it, just because I don't think it's going to last very long. You have probably been spoken to in these voices. One, if not several of these voices. You have probably spoken them as well, mumbling to yourself. They will make you feel something. So if you get a chance to listen to it, I'd really appreciate that. And please come on my site and leave me a little note. Tell me what you think. If you can remember which one you've heard, what it makes you feel. I want detailed descriptions. And again, hopefully this stays up for a couple days. Maybe longer. But just in case it doesn't, if you get a chance, it's about, 20 minutes long. If you get a chance, I'd really like to know your thoughts on this. So, George Washington. I wonder how Pope Francis felt looking up. He doesn't see Jesus ascending like he does in Rome, but instead sees the father of America, George Washington, portrayed as Jesus. Should be noted that the apotheosis of George Washington was painted by an artist from the Vatican, by the way. Constantino Brumidi. Brumidi was a prisoner of the Jesuits. He was exiled from Rome and the Vatican by the Pope. It was said that he was part of an attempt to overthrow the papacy. He was exiled to America. It's odd, eh? But he was a prisoner of the Jesuits. So maybe he's laughing in his grave today. His greatest revenge against the papacy, not painting Jesus in America's greatest temple, the U.S. Capitol. Instead, the Pope will see George Washington is America's God. If you want more information on this subject, please look for a book called Freedom's Gate, the lost symbol in the U.S. Capitol. It's very interesting. Freedom's Gate. So this again is part of the Pope's mega ritual going on. The Capitol. The United States Capitol is a Roman temple, the oldest surviving pagan temple in the modern world, in the Pantheon in Rome. The U.S. Capitol is a more modern dome. No, placed on top, obviously. But compare it to the Pantheon, which was built in ancient Rome. The Pantheon was a model for St. Peter's at the Vatican. U.S. Capitol on the U.S. state capitals. To relate Pope Francis to the U.S. Capitol, inside the U.S. Capitol was painted by an artist, the Vatican, again. So it's perfect that they send him there. And of course, the Jesuits built Washington, D.C. There are so many similarities between D.C. and the Vatican and Rome. The District of Columbia was originally a piece of land called Rome, Maryland. The land owned by a man named, you'll never guess what, Francis Pope. I know, right? The land was owned by Francis Pope. The land was between the states of Virginia and Maryland, the Virgin Mary. The Potomac River was even called the Tiber. All of these things. I know, it just gets weirder and weirder. Now, of course, September 23rd, the day arrived. A lot of people said it was going to be the end of the world. I did not. I said there was going to be something happening at Mecca. Depending on the exact date when it happened there, you could say, well, you were wrong a date. Nah. I was frickin' close, damn it. But it's not done yet. There's going to be something else. So Francis canonized the first saint. A violent, horrific mass murderer. Now that happened yesterday. United States formally dedicated to and protected by the Virgin Mary. In 1792, John Carroll, the Bishop of Baltimore, America's first Roman Catholic bishop, consecrated the newly created United States under the protection of the Blessed Virgin Mary, under the title of the Immaculate Conception. In 1847, the 7th Provincial Councils of Baltimore reiterated this choice to name the title Virgin Mary, conceived without sin, as the principal patroness of America, which Pope Pius the Ninth formalized February 7th, 1847, but was not publicly proclaimed until July 2nd, 1847. There is a shrine dedicated to the Virgin Mary, America's goddess, in Washington, D.C. It is called the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. The shrine is the largest Catholic church in the United States, the tallest habitable building in Washington, D.C. The cornerstone of the basilica was laid September 23rd, 1920, which is basically 9/23. September 23rd. Okay. Facebook has been ablaze with conspiracy theories about the date yesterday. 9/23, 9/23. Everything from comets to aliens to world takeovers to celestial alignments that were being talked about. In addition, 9/23 is also fall equinox, when the earth experiences a magical balance between the light and the dark. It's also the time of the fourth blood moon, and September 23rd is Yom Kippur, known as the Day of Atonement. It is the holiest day of the people of the Jewish faith. Pope Francis gave Mass at the Basilica, the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, Washington, D.C., on September 23rd, 9:23. If that's not enough, the tower of the basilica is 329, mirrored 923. Pope Francis is the 266th Pope, oddly arriving at the basilica on the 266th day of the year, September 23rd. Not convinced? Francis. Can I call you Francis? Francis spent noontime hours yesterday in prayer with bishops at St. Matthew's Cathedral in Washington, D.C. What is interesting is Matthew's position in the Washington, D.C. grid. The streets north of the White House in Washington, D.C. form a broken pentagram, meaning the streets, when seen from above on Google Earth, forms 80%-ish of an inverted pentagram, whose tip is at the White House. The pentagram is often associated with physical man and can be drawn with a human's body overlaid on it, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head corresponding to the 5 rays of the pentagram star. Interestingly enough, the pentagram in Washington, D.C. has been purposely left 1/10 undone. 1/5 of the 5 rays is missing. The 1/10 of the pentagram ray that is missing is symbolically the 10% teeth to the Lord. He took a piece of our leg. Well, actually it's our arm, because it's interestingly enough, when you look at it from Google Earth, we're kind of upside down. So we would be the hanged man in this one. Hanged by our foot, of course, which is a problem. So know this: the broken pentagram in D.C. ends at the World Bank Treasury, and the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle. St. Matthew was a tax collector. The Bible says we're supposed to give the Lord 10%, 1/10. And symbolically, that is the 10th of the pentagram that is missing. And it is missing starting at the Catholic Cathedral of St. Matthew. The Pope held midday prayer, September 23rd, 923, at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle. When John Kennedy was assassinated, his Catholic death mass was held there at St. Matthew's and the broken pentagram. St. Matthew's is the location for one of the most famous Catholic red masses in the world. Each year, on the day before the term of the Supreme Court of the United States begins, a Mass is celebrated to request guidance from the Holy Spirit for legal profession. Owing to the cathedral's location in the nation's capital, the justices of the Supreme Court, members of Congress and the Cabinet, and many other dignitaries, including at times President of the United States, attend the Mass. So near the entry of the St. Francis Chapel is a burial crypt with eight tombs intended for Washington's archbishops. Currently two former archbishops, Patrick Cardinal O'Boyle and James Cardinal Hickey are interned there. Cardinal William Baum, also a former Archbishop of Washington, died July 23rd, 2015, and is to be buried in that crypt. July 23rd is Neptuna, the feast of Neptune. Oddly, the planet Neptune was discovered on September 23rd, the day of Pope Francis' midday prayer. The Cardinal William Baum died 7/23, the feast of the god Neptune. Pope Francis holding the prayer on that date of planet Neptune's discovery. Finally, some consideration could be paid to the symbolism involving the positioning of the missing pentagram here. I should look at that. Which corresponds to a man's left hand, his sinister hand, if you will. In many European languages, including English, the word for the direction, right, also means correct. It means proper. Throughout history, being left-handed was considered negative. Latin adjective sinister means left, as well as unlucky. And this double meaning survives in European derivatives of Latin, including the word sinister, English word sinister, only when referring to the bearer's left of the coat of arms. There are many negative connotations associated with the phrase left-handed: clumsy, awkward, unlucky, insincere, sinister, malicious, and so on. A left-handed compliment is considered one that is unflattering or dismissive in meaning. In magic, the terms left-hand path and right-hand path refer to a dichotomy between two opposing approaches found in Western esoteric teachings, which itself covers various groups involved in the occult, ceremonial magic. In some definitions, the left-hand path is equated with malicious black magic, right-hand path, white magic. It's odd. But we need to consider some of these things, because it's weird, right? When things get bizarre and occulted, we have to consider one of three positions. It is an act of God. It is an act of man. It is random chaos intersecting as order. So here are some bizarro world, occult, global event facts. The largest gathering of Christians in America occurred yesterday in Washington, D.C., New York, and Philadelphia, America's three capitals. This gathering of millions of Catholics with Pope Francis will continue all week from the 22nd to the 27th. At the exact same time, halfway across the world, in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, millions of Islamic pilgrims circumnavigate the Kaaba, the Black Cube, the most holy site in all of Islam, 22nd to 26th. In fact, millions of Catholics, millions of Muslims praying simultaneously on opposite sides of the planet is mind-bending, to say the least. But this, with all the magnetic wind waves and mind waves created this week, all with the goal of connecting to Source, unprecedented. presented it the fact that the solar system is in a sacred alignment, officially called balance. We call it the equinox. As well as Jews around the world fasting in a deep state of meditation. In prayer, it is Yom Kippur, it is the Day of Atonement. It is when we receive the seal of God. And then Pope Francis, facing the Washington obelisk, the big shaft of ball. It's an ancient symbol. It represents, you know what? But it's supposed to represent the phallus of God himself, the myths that we are going over right now. It can't be ignored. All of these things, they're keep being thrown in my face. Of Baal and Osiris. We hear how the enemy of God cut off his penis, causing God to be unable to produce offspring. In the end, it is the goddess who, wanting to become pregnant, fertilizes herself in what is known as the Immaculate Conception. Same story. And then again, the Pope said Mass yesterday afternoon at the Basilica of the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, how it's appropriate. Or really inappropriate. It's probably both. So Pope Francis should absolutely have been comfortable facing the shaft of Baal, Osiris, because he was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where there is a 221-foot Baal shaft. Should I say Baal? Baal? I know it's going to sound dirty no matter how I say it, so let's just move on. Now, Pope Francis works and lives in Rome, at the Vatican, where they too have a Baal shaft. This one's 148 feet tall. It's a smaller one. Yeah, I'm going to leave that alone. So, it was originally from the tomb of Amun in Karnak, Egypt. However, it is Washington, D.C. that has the biggest I'm sorry. One. Do you remember, was it a couple years ago that the head cracked of that great big Washington monument? But it measures 555 feet. Converted to inches, it becomes 6,660 inches, or 666. Take away the 0. So, Day of Atonement, Washington Obelisk, 236. No, 239. Well, that's again, switch it backwards, it's 923. 922, so September 22, the official beginning of the fall equinox, when the sun starts its descent into the underworld. It was then that Pope Francis first beheld in person the world's greatest Baal shaft, the Washington Monument. Francis and this both equal 229, September 22nd. You just play with the numbers a little bit. And then Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. It's the day when God impresses his seal upon mankind. Yesterday. So the seal, 229. Again, play with those numbers. That's September 22. So as the Pope faced the obelisk in Washington, D.C., halfway around the world in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, millions of Muslims performing this Hajj. At the Kaaba, the cube. Kaaba is home to the world's biggest clock. The clock at Mecca, 229. September 22nd. The Kaaba, or the cube, and this clock are related to the god of time. So we go back to Saturn. Don't forget, the Washington obelisk is also a clock, a sundial. When we face the obelisk, we face the god of time, the Time Lord. This is why Pope Francis, this mega ritual, occurred on the fall equinox, so 9/23. And time does one thing in the end. Time destroys life, but life also has a beginning. In the beginning is called the conception. Pope Francis departed the Washington obelisk and later held Mass at the Basilica. He canonized a saint. Saint Junipero Serra, father of California. And, I can't, I know it sounds dirty, and I am very childish. I understand this. You guys know me enough to know that is going to get a freaking giggle. How many times do I have to say obelisk in one freaking conversation with these guys? Even about these guys. So this guy who says, if Christians would just give up his gun, or our guns, well, just spent more money than anyone else has ever spent for security. So I guess he doesn't really feel all that secure. And when Pope Francis arrived in D.C., the subways immediately lost power. Well, that's most likely because he didn't want all the rabble getting there. But something strange is happening. Like, there are widespread outages on various platforms all over the world. Of course, we all lost Skype the other day, but it's everywhere. And as for the Pope granting a sainthood to a brutal missionary, oh my God. Junipero Serra, and people just sat and, listened to that. Franciscan friar. Oversaw the whipping, the beating, the flogging, and the extermination of American natives in California. Specifically, Serra was the founder of the state's first mission in San Diego. At that time, according to records kept by missionaries, the state's indigenous population was around 350,000 as a result of, how do I say this nice? The tender administrations of Christianity. The indigenous population went down to 62,000 in California. Genocide is just another disgraceful example of the history here that is forgotten, whitewashed, ignored. Many living members are descendants of the Pommel tribe in North California. The only reason I even looked at this today is because I don't have any family who died from that, or I wouldn't be able to write about it, right? So when the King of Spain, let's go back, sent Jesuit priests to prevent Russian fur hunters from claiming the region, California, he directed them to educate, baptize native people so they could become Spanish citizens. Sayre had entirely other plans. He brutally converted to Christianity, wiped out entire cultures, languages, villages, and the fact that he didn't bathe, he was most likely covered in all kinds of nastiness. Under his leadership, this guy, who is now canonized, is now saint. Saint pedophile. Whatever. Anyway, under his leadership, soldiers violently captured California's Native Americans, forced them into labor camps, imprisoned them until they died. Beaten, flogged, placed in shackles that didn't allow them to bend their knees for days. If they grieved the loss of loved ones, they were whipped. Mothers who had miscarriages were not allowed to mourn. Instead, they were accused of having abortions, and then forced to hold a carved figure of an infant while standing outside of a church mission. Women were whipped in public. Well, not whipped in public, but in an enclosed, somewhat distant place, that their cries may not excite too lively compassion, and maybe cause the men to revolt. Yeah, that's a guy. That's a saint. So I want you to know, even though it sounds like he did some lovely things as Pope, going outside, eating with the homeless, this is not an okay guy. And what about the Pope's fiat? Because that was made a big deal. I listened for a little while because he's so humble. He came in a little car. So why a fiat, do you think? The full definition of fiat is an official order given by someone who has power, an order that must be followed, a command or an act of will that creates something without, or as if without further effort, an authoritative determination, a dictate, a fiat of conscience, an authoritative or arbitrary order, a decree, to government or to govern by fiat. And of course money. So all this prayer. And what about this security operation for this man of God? His visit triggered unprecedented security operation in the United States. President and Mrs. Hold on.
Obama will greet the Pope when he
Sorry. Hey, isn't that Oprah's friend? Oh, so Oprah's girlfriend's got a big job now? Oh boy. So anyway, President and Mrs. Obama weren't the only ones who getting the Pope greeting him, of course. He landed Tuesday afternoon, and so did a massive, unprecedented police force. the biggest operation security-wise in U.S. history. This first visit in nearly 7 years. Law enforcement was putting on the final touches. Security plan at the Vatican's official residence in Washington, where the Pope's going to sleep. All hands on deck. There were no credible threats. Although just last month a 15-year-old in New Jersey was arrested, who investigators say may have been communicating with Iraq and Syria as part of a plan to bomb and carry out an attack on some visiting diplomat, or maybe the Pope. He's 50. Now last week, Pennsylvania police warned people impersonating officers to carry out an attack. It was specifically related to the Pope's visit, but still raised concerns. All three cities hosting the Pope, Washington, New York, Philadelphia, have an unprecedented security plan that had been in the works for months, involved thousands of local, state, federal law enforcement, secret police, too. Also had access to 3D virtual map, which offers a detailed, advanced look at all the locations a Pope would visit. It's difficult to predict every move, I would imagine. Pontiff, who is well known for going off script, I doubt it, mingling with the crowds. In fact, Secret Service was so concerned that they have been studying movements for months, monitoring tapes, sending detailed leader and others to Rome to watch the Pope, how he moves, apparently, as well as personal details about how they will secure his movements over the next couple days. So he's a rock star. Now, according to the Philadelphia police, they're concerned of lone wolf attacks. No one can say 100% that you can stop everything, but there are steps that can be taken. Yeah. So I guess it went well. I'm laughing at the mega spectacle. I laugh in the face of the speculum. I do. I'm laughing in the big face of this. So prophecy, guys. It's going to be a big month. We're already deep dish into it. And again, if you get a chance, check out that video, top of my page. Tell me if you have heard those languages. And I'm only trying to push it. I'm not making any money or anything like that off of that. I just want you to hear it because I heard something and thought I recognized these things. So let me know, okay? Let me know what you think. Now, on September 28th, although there's more stuff happening tomorrow, but you're going to hear this from everybody, we will get the last of the 4 blood moons. They all fall on biblical festival dates. During 2014 and 2015, the blood moon will be the supermoon. It will be clearly visible from the city of Jerusalem. I've got no calls on this one, what's happening next. Everything pointed that there would be something in Mecca, and I think something today, something tomorrow, but something could be anything. No call for that one. I just really felt the strong, everything was pointing to Mecca, and because that was a third thing. They come in threes usually, everything. You probably heard that expression. But anyway, according to Google, the supermoon is the coincidence of a full moon or new moon with the closest approach the moon makes to Earth in its elliptical orbit, resulting in the largest apparent size of the lunar disk as seen from Earth. So recent years, there have been some that suggest there's a link between supermoons and increased seismic activity. And we have a lot going on in South America right now and on the West Coast. Although I think, you know, that little spot between North America and South America, Panama Canal, that's looking really odd to me. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Others, though, completely debunked this theory, so whatever. I've read both sides of the argument. I have to say I got nothing. I don't know, but it does look odd. West Coast has looked odd for years, so, you know, if you call something on the West Coast, it's science. Even scientists are saying something on the West Coast could happen, but, you know, something always could happen, right? There could always be something happen. There always will be something happen. And a strange piece. NATO High Command. And I don't want to go into blood moons. I've blood mooned us to death. You probably hear lots. But NATO is weird. NATO High Command has moved to DEFCON 1. There have been apparently major military assaults taking place. Satellites have gone down. Could this be part of the glitches that are happening all over the world? But there's several nuclear bunkers in the United States, in the UK, in France, in Canada that are experiencing glitches. Now, under the unprecedented 3.5 years of global governance that has seen great strides forward in peace and prosperity, culminating in the final solution to the Israel problem heralding global peace in our time, sudden destruction was unleashed. Full mobilizations of NATO forces is underway right now, following something that looked highly coordinated, an attack. Because it's happening at nuclear installations, military bases across United States, Britain, and France. I don't know. Early warning satellite systems were disabled. Just before dawn, innocent weather satellites, now known to contain explosive charges, may have been detonating a stream of debris into orbit because it looks like suddenly there was all kinds of meteor strikes all over the world, but they didn't hit the ground. But Trident submarines have been isolated from their command structure, unable to receive data. We will have to wait and see about that. I don't know. But the UN president we'll have to wait and see. A lot of these things sound, I don't know, it sounds fantastic to me, as in unbelievable. But I will look into it, and if I find any more, I will definitely let you guys know. It's pretty strange, isn't it? All of these things going on at once. If it was just one thing, but with the Skype attack and the constant attacks that are going on, cyber, strange phone things, Verizon once again hit. Verizon gets hit. Maybe the aliens really hate Verizon, and the first thing they do is say, "Hey, look, it's Verizon. Let's take them out." I don't know. It's weird though, right? It's weird. When we try to look at the UN, it looks to me as if the UN itself is taking over. And I realize we're an omnicidal species right now. I mean, there's very little that we won't kill. Most of us claim to value life and say that all lives matter. But if all lives matter, Palestinian lives matter, Syrian lives matter, Iraqi lives matter, Afghan lives matter, Libyan lives matter. If all lives matter, then even Osama bin Laden's life mattered. So did al-Awlaki's and his 15-year-old son. So did Gaddafi and the lives of every member of the armed forces who died in the Middle East battlefield, including Americans. But they're dead now, gone forever. George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, all the neoconservatives who advocated going to war in Iraq to prevent Saddam Hussein from acquiring non-existent weapons of mass destruction, murdered them as surely as Dr. Palmer murdered Cecil the Lion. Is there ever truly a reason to kill? I don't know. Was it because of the story that we've been told about young Eve's tryst with the serpent in the garden? Or because of some wild imagination based on ignorance? That we have some sort of reptilic dysfunction? I read about this hiker being mauled by a bear in Yellowstone. A sow was spotted, and although no one had witnessed the mauling, the assumption was made that she was the mauler. She was captured and put down. Why? For having offended human sensibilities. She may not have been the bear or guilty, and no other bear in the park had been prevented from mauling anyone because of her death. Her killing had no purpose whatsoever. It was purely gratuitous. It was an act of vengeance. When the news about Dr. Palmer's killing of Cecil the Lion in Zimbabwe hit the air, Palmer, exceedingly rich American, wanted the pleasure of killing a lion so he could hang its head on the wall. He wanted a trophy. He claims to have done no wrong, but he tried to hide the killing. Cecil's collar was hidden in a tree before his head was removed for mounting. It was all perfectly innocent, of course, except for Cecil's special status, being a lion with a name and a collar. We need to stop. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you next week.